Nick, welcome aboard. Nick is the co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the nitty-gritty of what we got to do here?
Yeah, so I've been like a longtime Houston resident for going on maybe 7 years now. And I'm co-chair of the Houston chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, where locally we have about 500 members. And we've
500 members?
Yeah, 500. And that is up from the very first meeting I went to back in October of 2016. There were 4 people, including myself. So now we have over 500 members, and we draw upwards of 80, 100 attendees to our meetings.
Yeah, every time I go to the meeting, it's full. I mean, we're putting chairs out and chairs out and chairs out, and the people keep coming and the people keep coming. What I love about it, though, it seems to reach, and older folks don't join as well, but we have a good young crew that's and young folks like yourself run everything, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that particularly inspiring,
right,
that so many young people are getting involved in politics, and particularly democratic socialism, in a really huge way. You know, we're not like a lot of other political organizations. We do things like Harvey Muck and Gut.
Right.
Even over a year later, we're still continuing to do it. We're actually doing it this Saturday still. You know, we also do endorse, campaigns, but we're very targeted in who we endorse. We only endorse 5 candidates in this electoral cycle. 2 of them have made it onto the general election here in November, and we're campaigning hard, knocking doors, calling numbers.
You know, that is great. I mean, this is an organization that actually performs. I remember during Harvey, a friend of mine called and said, oh, they had to get out because the river was rising and it was going to take over their home. I couldn't think of anybody else to call. I called Amy, the other co-chair and Amy, I think, got in touch with you, and you got a truck out there, and they moved it, moved them. So I'm talking, this is about action and doing things for people. So that's a great organization, which I must say I'm also a member of that organization. So I'm wearing 2 hats right here. Anyhow, so what are your plans going forward? I know towards the election you've endorsed quite a few people. What are your plans going forward as far as what do you expect?
So like I said, we've endorsed 2 great candidates. One is Franklin Bynum, running for Harris County Criminal Court Position 8. And another is Deshaun Jones, and he's running for District Court, 180th District Court. And so we're pushing really hard. We're getting close to the month mark out from the election date. So we're pushing hard to get to register voters and let the voters know about these 2 really great candidates and how they'll fight to make our judicial systems more equitable for everybody.
Right. Now, I don't want to get into the announcement here. I'm want to put you in a spot here because a lot of people, especially the older folk, they hear things, and in fact, it's something that has really hurt the Democratic Party. They hear the word democratic socialism and they go into a fizzy panic. Why don't you just explain to these folks that democratic socialism is probably what 90% of America wants?
Well, I mean, I saw a report by BuzzFeed just this morning that said over 30% of millennials at large and almost 50% of millennial Democrats identify as socialists or democratic socialists. So it's something we're going to have to get used to on our political scene. It's not going away. And I think the continued growth of DSA attests to that. But yeah, I mean, these things, the things that we advocate as democratic socialists, we're starting small. And by small, I mean, we want single payer health care, $15 minimum wage, greater rights for workers to organize into unions, and obviously racial and criminal justice, abolishing cash bail. So it shouldn't matter what's in your wallet when it comes to whether or not you're in jail. It should matter what's in, what your case is, right? So these are things that we advocate nationally and locally. And, our broader scheme is to democratize our economy.
Thank you.
What does that mean? That means instead of, the select few shareholders, the select few presidents and CEOs of companies calling the shots, we decide these things democratically. together as a people so that we avoid things like 2008 financial crash,
right,
that our economy is geared towards preventing the impending climate crisis. The reason that we haven't made our haven't transitioned our economy from being a more sustainable system is because it makes so much money for the people at the top. And so if we had control, if the people had control of the economy and and put their input into those decision-making processes in a more democratic way, I think that we would have a more sustainable and more equitable society and economy.
Why is it so difficult to make that sale when most Americans, and when I say most Americans, I mean over 80% of Americans partake very little of the spoils of the current economic system?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's simple. I mean, at one level, most everyone at least, right? They have employers,
right?
They have bosses,
right?
And so they are limited what they can do in the workplace, where a lot of these battles will take place. And historically, if you look back in time, a lot of these battles to bring about democracy have taken place in the workplace. Well, we have everyone is even more precarious these days. Living paycheck to paycheck. They're often supporting not only their family but extended family, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and so they just don't have the resources available to them. They don't have the freedom, the economic freedom, to make the political demands, right? And and people are in debt. All these things combine to make an environment where people are very reluctant to step out of bounds when it comes to a lot of political discussion.
Yeah, I had a show once on democratic socialism, and I used an example of a company in Spain. I can't remember the name of Spain, right?
Was it Mondragon?
There you go. It's amazing we know it, right? That actually showed that these concepts can actually work. These concepts can actually be profitable, and these concepts can be good for everybody.
And that's a really great point. A lot of people, they think of socialism, especially like you said, older people, think of socialism, this very top down,
right?
State owned industries, that sort of thing. And not saying that might not be a part of the solution, for key industries, like telecommunications.
Well, for the commons,
yeah. But for a lot of society, a lot of the economy, a lot of companies, like that will look like the company you just alluded to, Mondragon. They're a cooperatively owned company, and the employees are making decisions about the direction the company is taking, and it's been wildly successful in Spain.
It is amazing that in Germany, even though they are not to that level, they finally decided, or not they finally, they actually have the unions as a part of the board, the negotiations of what the company is going to do. Look how well that works, Yeah. Over here, we don't even have that. Elizabeth Warren came out with a plan to add 40% of the board being the worker, representing the workers, and that brought up a stink. Every capitalist came out and said it would destroy the economy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of surprising. I actually used to live in Germany for a time. And I mean, let me tell you, Germany is still firmly a capitalist economy. And the fact that conservatives and the capitalists and business owners, or corporate owners, that they're reacting so strongly to this really mild reform,
exactly,
speaks a lot to how afraid they are.
Well, they are afraid because, again, the truth of the matter is, and I've shown this mathematically, right? What we're in currently is mathematically unsustainable, and it shows in the wealth disparity. This is by design. You're going to have some sort of redistribution in this type of economy, or if you want to really make it more equitable, you'll simply have a change in the economy. I'm sure you would agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we look at a lot, coming as a democratic socialist, right?
Right.
We look at a lot of the reforms that we won and that were won across the world in the New Deal era.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we get things like, Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
This is where insurance, just in general, starts coming from this era. And then later, of course, with LBJ, we get Medicare, Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these reforms were hard fought for, and we won them, and it gave previous generations a lot of security
and dignity.
That's right.
Right.
But we've seen how Republicans, we've seen how conservatives, and we've seen how certain even neoliberal Democrats,
blue dogs, yes,
how they have steadily eroded these hard-fought reforms over the past 30-40 years. And so my position is that it's not enough to just win these reforms. What we have to have is a fundamental transformation of our economy, and like I said, make sure that the decisions of our economy are made by the people. Because if these things, we haven't gone, knock on wood, not yet, we haven't gone back to a more authoritarian system in the U.S., right? Since we won these political democratic rights, now it's time to win economic democratic rights.
The thing about it, though, is Nick, is that as you, meaning the movement, becomes more powerful, there will be more attacks. There will be more sabotage. There will be a whole lot. Now, as it is, they're just scared. Later on, they'll become scared and active. Are there work groups looking into what that means and where it's going to go? Because I mean, like I said, there are a lot of young people that are running these organizations right now. Do they understand what the sabotage is going to look like as you gain more power, which you will?
Well, I think we saw the first taste of that in a New York State Senate race. A DSA member and organizer by the name of Julia Salazar ran against one of the more conservative, more neoliberal Democrats, who was, in the pocket of all that nasty stuff that, Governor Cuomo is doing up there.
Right.
And she got dumped with Oppo research, and people were saying the most heinous things about her, even released the fact that she was a victim of sexual violence in an effort to smear her campaign, which is just despicable.
Right. She didn't win, did she?
She actually did win her primary,
right.
And she's running in Brooklyn, so the odds, she's the overwhelming favorite to win in November.
So she was. So it's like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we will, and in fact, her district's just south of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And so that means not only will New York have a Democratic Socialist representative on the federal level, but they'll have a socialist state senator on the state level.
And then, of course, we have one in Washington state, I think, who's on the city council for
Kashama
Swan. Yeah. Right. So I mean, all over the country, it's starting to happen slowly. And by as what I do think that we need, though, is for folks like yourself, the younger folks that are out there, or millennials or gens, to go out there and really take the fear from some of the older folks out of this stuff. Thank you so kindly, Nick Bunce, for being here with us. And you know what? You're going to be back real quick, 10 seconds.
Yeah. So I encourage people to go to our website, HoustonDSA.org, get on our calendar, get involved.